All right, so that river got foiled. 6 people and a dog, and the only pool that probably held steelhead, nobody, and I couldn't get in there. They would have had them all spooked out of there. So now I can throw a fisherman's path out of the Stamp River, this big timber, and there's a big deep pool here. Went here last winter steelhead fishing. Didn't see a thing or catch anything, but I know there's some big springs in here already because I saw an old native guy hauling his net out at close to the mouth, and I watched him pull probably 4 fish around 30-35 pounds out of his net. So there should be some up. Will there be any up this far? I don't know. I'm gonna find out. Big timber here, man. I guess I'm not alone. Let's see what goes on down here. Hope there's enough fish to keep these bears happy instead of cranky. To bonk them in the head with a GoPro. What a day. I literally went all over the place. Trying to find a place by a river to make videos and possibly film fish, but it just wasn't working out. There's people downriver from me, a couple crazy dogs. It's 34 degrees. Which got to be, what is that, around 100 or something, or a little less, I don't know. Either way, it's too hot for a Canadian. So here I am. There won't be any rocks thrown at me where I am. There's just too many people here. And I'm going away for 4 days, a couple days guiding. Some people from California jumping on the boat soon from here. You can see if they have any, if they remember the club or not. Now, what do we got? So many. So many. All right, here we go. This is the title. Part 1, Switchback Trailhead Olympic National Forest. Steve Thomas, I sent my story in about our experience while on a search and rescue in 2014. The rescue pilot saw the creature / Sabe. Totally remember that one, man. Here's my personal experience. August 2021. I and 7 friends of mine decided to take an overnight hike into the wilderness around the Olympic National Park area of northwest Washington, across the straits from Vancouver Island. We set off at the Switchback Trailhead on the north side of the mountains. The day was perfect, warm, clear, and full of relaxation. It was around 5:30 when we started our hike. We decided to hike roughly 45 miles to Lake Angeles Campground and bivouac for the evening and fish and swim and relax. Port Angeles is right across from where I grew up. This lake's in high country. After setting up my tent, I cleared the side of branches, rocks, and pine cone debris. I wasn't even thinking about work, home, nothing. Funny how that works, isn't it? At 8:45 p.m., my friend Mark was kneeling behind the edge of his tent, staring into the woodline, not saying a thing. I walked over to see if he was all right when I noticed his 10mm pistol in his hand. I crouched immediately and asked him, "What are you seeing?" His reply was, "Dude, there's something out there." And I'm like, "Where?" I demanded. Hope this wind isn't screwing up the microphone on here. I'll bet you it is. We'll see. I walked over to see if he was all right when I noticed his 10mm pistol in his hand. I crouched immediately, asking him, "What are you seeing?" His reply was, "Dude, there's someone out there." "Where?" I demanded. He turned his head slightly to tell me, 40 yards dead ahead, watch that small tree. At this point, I remember the Idaho experience during a search and rescue recovery where the Life Light pilots saw a creature walking away, and I didn't want to miss seeing this creature with my own eyes. As time went by, about 5 minutes, the only thing we saw together was a 10-foot pine tree shake like it was pulled and let go. 10:30 p.m., tired from the day, I headed to bed. About 15 minutes went by when we heard a tree fall. Everyone on alert and talking. A branch was thrown, hitting the fire pit between the tents. I don't think the wind's hitting it. We'll see. I was certain our buddy Luke was responsible since he's the joker of the crew, but he was snoring. This harassment continued all night. Mark and I stepped out to investigate the area, flashlights and guns in hand, nothing to see. At 4:20 a.m., a low moaning, grunting started from 2 areas on either side of the camp. I can't begin to tell you how freaked out I was, let alone the others. It would start on the south side, stop, then another would start on the north side, on the slope above us. By 05:05, sun not up enough to shine on the camp, there were 3 separate sound locations, rocks being thrown, huffing, and low, deep growls. We decided to start packing camp to leave. No doubt. And this is where I saw what was going on. We were camped on the lake shoreline. Where we were camped on the lake shoreline was at the north end of the lake. We hiked up along the west side, following the obvious trail. We packed and were heading back till we came upon a tree over the trail. Now I knew, as we all agreed, this probably was the tree we heard fall the evening before. As we talked, there by the tree, Mark shouts, "Shit, it's a Bigfoot." I turned in time to see a brown, upright body step into the brush. We decided to take the east trail instead, freaked out now and excited about what we witnessed. We moved much slower than coming in, watching for any strange, sorry, I got reflections all over this thing from that sky behind me. Each time we went off trail or stopped, a branch would break or we'd hear a large foot stomp behind us. The east trail was not clean and clear. Lots of brush cover on the east trail was not clean and clear. Lots of brush cover any clear trail. We did get away from the lake to the south, but not on the trail we came in on. I heard 3 distinct noises from 3 different areas, all pushing us down the mountain somewhat towards our vehicles. Every single time we'd slow or stray, we'd hear a growl or a scream changing our course. We came out onto Hurricane Ridge Road, the main road, about 3 miles from where we entered. I saw the distant outline of 3 creatures 4 times. Head and weight varies on each. They'd stay in the shadows,
the entire trip. That is freaking insane. What an incredible intelligence they showed. To observe us all night, they selectively made sounds, intimidating sounds, to drive us away from our camp, guiding us away, making course changes, pushing us back to where we came from, while keeping out of sight. I don't have to see them. I don't want to. There is no way in hell these beings are simple apes. Bingo. They use distraction, screams, thought projection, mind speak, or infrasound to induce fear to move humans away. You're absolutely correct with one fact. If they wanted to kill us, they would have, and nothing would have stopped that. Steve, I've learned a lot from your channel, the many stories and encounters people have had. I hope this somewhat lengthy account will help someone when they encounter these people. My mind is blown. It's hard not thinking about it every day now. Stay strong, Steve. Keep speaking the simple truth. Thomas. No doubt, dude. Once you're slapped in the face with that reality, man, I don't know how people block it. I don't know how people blank it out of their minds. I don't understand how they do it. I guess if you don't normally go in the woods, it should be pretty easy, but I go in the woods a lot. Handful of people way upriver. What a thing to see, man, especially to be getting manipulated by them in the bush. Getting intentionally manipulated by them, and they're directing you out. Actually, the way they do it is actually quite polite, though, don't you think? Think about how humans act if they want humans out. Right? Gunshots, intimidation, screaming and yelling and swear words and threatening. Anyway, I've got part 2 right underneath your part 1, thank God. Part 2, return to Switchback Trailhead Olympic National Forest. Steve wrote about our encounter last summer in the Olympic National Forest a little bit ago, and how we were pushed out of our camp area. Well, I went back to the lake area last month. I wanted to understand the dynamics of what I call a family of forest people and why we were pushed out. I understand the area was probably home for them. We were intruding, and that would have annoyed me if strangers settled in my front yard. The way we were pushed down the mountain stuck with me. It was deliberate, well organized, and not violent in any way. My friends thought about all the little things they remember, each writing it down. The odd thing was that nobody remembered the same actions, i.e., one heard one thing while the other didn't. Yeah, that's kind of bizarre. Actually, no, I've experienced that directly too. As I packed my camping gear, my thoughts were on how was that possible? How could we all share the same space in the woods yet not experience the same thing? I arrived at the trailhead early on a Friday. I planned on a one-night stay since the weather is not favorable for 2 nights. I expected these creatures to recognize me right away since I wore the same clothes, hat, and backpack I had on when we were there last. 30 minutes into the hike to the lake, the forest was quiet. Birds were singing. 2 black-tailed deer walked across the trailhead ahead of me, but no other creature came across my eyes. Settling in the campsite near the lake edge, I built a fire, put up my tent, took out my frying pan, and made dinner. All of a sudden, at the north end of the lake, what must have been a good-sized rock splashed the water some 30 yards from me. Here we go. Careful what you ask for, right, man? I'll admit my body almost sucked up into a little mush ball. For a second, I couldn't think, but I stood up and looked at the tree line for anyone or anything that threw that rock. Nothing. I didn't see a thing. As daylight faded, I stoked the fire, bringing it to a roar. It was at that moment I saw 4 sets of eyes peering at me from the tree line across the lake. 2 sets were red, about 9 to 8 feet off the ground. 1 set was a blue-green, about 7 foot high, and the last set was yellow, only about 4 feet off the ground. I could hear walking, a few branches breaking, but not much more. I stood up, greeted them openly, asking if they remembered me. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but I remember how you said, "I tell them I'm here to hunt and leave me alone, as I'll leave you alone." I thought, what the hell, I'll try that. I said, "I'm here to camp overnight because I wanted to see you." Feeling a bit freaked, a little crazy, I looked down at the fire for a second, looked back up, and they're all gone. I'm laying there at 11:30 at night, head spinning with thoughts of busting out of there, when I was overcome with an overwhelming feeling of peace. My headspin was replaced by the thought of family and peace. I fell asleep soon after. I woke at almost 8 a.m., fully rested. There was enough fire to restore with the last of the dry wood I collected, ate breakfast, packed, and headed down the trail to my SUV. As I looked across the lake, it was clear this was home to them. I was followed down the mountain this time, no growling, screaming, or rock throwing. It felt like I was an escort, not a push-out. At the SUV, I did manage to see the big male, I assume, shadowed. He was about 12 feet tall and 25 yards into the wood line. No shit. As we stared at each other for a few seconds, it simply vanished. I guess I was lucky it had pissed them off. I felt like it was okay to be there, and they didn't seem to mind either. This answered every question I had. Speaking for myself, I understand they are yet another creature trying to live in peace. I hope this helps answer your question, Steve. Sincerely, Thomas. Thomas, you got a big set on you, man. Right? I'm sure everybody's agreeing with me. You got a big set on you. I guess, I don't know, I go back where they are too, but, I just say it out loud, I'm not here to see you. I didn't want to see you, I got nothing to do with you, I'm just here to hunt or passing through, whatever. And, obviously that's an important thing to do, right? If you still want to have that connection with the real world, you still want to enjoy your passions, and you don't want it ruined. But then there's those other things that are running around that aren't so good, right? And there's a whole slew of answers that need to be answered when it comes to those other things. Crazy experiences, man. Thank you so much for that share. And if you decide to go back again, email it into me, all right? Be careful. Go with your intuition. Be careful. All right, what do we got here? This looks like a fairly long one. How long is this sucker? Yeah, it's pretty long. I'm going for it. My release and share. All right. Steve, use my name, Keith. I'm following your channel and the various experiences you share with everyone for several months now. You're the most honest fellow for people's stories without a shred of ridicule. Really, I want you to know that you are a true supporter of souls for sharing and posting the most horrid experiences that deal with the rather unexplained. And this compelled me to share through you, and thank you. Good news, and thank you for the kind words. And this channel is nothing without you. All right? Looking forward to this read, man. Super, super stoked that you found all these people here through me. I had an experience in 1991 from Little Lone Meigs County, Ohio, Meigs. I've also come to realize that this experience that I have shared with no single person for 30 years may actually be related to these beings that I have become more aware of now and start to seriously consider. I grew up in simple times of the late 70s through the early 90s on a small hobby farm of 50 acres in southeast Ohio, not far from the Ohio River. I think I'm a rather rational person that has been able to explain and justify many odd experiences over the years. But this experience was locked in my mind for many years now. So this email is unlocking it. It was the week after Thanksgiving in Ohio, which meant whitetail hunting. Our 50-acre farm bordered larger farms that had given permission to hunt with a simple phone call every time. This allowed me to roam about 500 acres of land in the crazy pursuit of whitetail monsters for years. What a frickin' hoot that must be. I was a senior in high school at the time and always spent as much time as possible scouting the most of the year leading up to the season. My preferred method to take was a Winchester 20-gauge pump shooting old-school Foster slugs. Not the best, however. It was a legal, effective weapon out to 50 yards. It took many deer for years as a gift from my dad, passed in 2017. Deer season was Monday morning through Saturday, 6 days, and I tried every evening after school. It was the final day, and I was feeling the need to take a deer to make my effort count. Call it a mule deer. My strategy was to set up on the neighbor's fence line to hopefully catch the group of does that always bed in there during the day. It was 3:30 in the afternoon when I set up on the opposite side of a hollow with a direct line to a clearing of 30 yards. Perfect, I thought. I was blessed with a string of 5 does coming out, one at a time from the fence line. I steadied and chose the largest mature doe right behind her shoulder. Dogfight. I pulled the trigger thinking it was all good, but my round did not drop her like I thought it would. She got up quickly and ran back the way she came through the fence with the other does scattering. I waited for about 10 minutes and walked over to that area. Blood, lots of it. I was feeling good about a short tracking, but this is where things got totally bizarre for me over the next 2 or 3 hours. The trail was easy to follow with lots of sign and clear indication that I would find my doe. I quickly tracked her for about 60 yards to an area that was clearly the last place this poor doe was, but there was no deer to be found anywhere. What struck me was the amount of blood in that 8-foot area all over the ground and leaf litter, certainly not far away. I searched in circles around that area until finally picking up a small amount of blood at 2 feet up a tree trunk. I thought it unusual at the time that a 10-yard circle would not produce a deer, but I also knew that whitetails can actually have 9 lives like a cat. At this point, I was feeling bad about my shot placement for the sake of a quick kill. I followed the trail, noting that the blood was actually along the tree trunks instead of the signs in the leaves on the ground. Unusual. At this point, it was about an hour after pulling the trigger, with darkness following. I trailed another 100 yards up to the West Virginia pulp and paper property boundary to find blood on the top fence wire and post. I pulled out my small flashlight to help me guide at this point with very little light left. I was amazed at the time a wounded deer would clear that fence. She wanted to live. This property was new territory for me, but I had to find that doe for sure. I followed through some very thick brush for several yards and approached a large white oak not 30 yards behind the fence that had less brush around it. As I stood up, fully to survey, I felt very uncomfortable, instantly, and swept side to side with the light. To this day, I can remember the weakness in my knees and the instant fear that made my feet feel stuck in place, meaning something was not right from a sixth sense. I noticed blood on the tree with the light showing more up the trunk. I can remember my eyes following up the trunk with immediate disbelief. In the fork of this white oak, at 15 to 20 feet up, was my deer. She was right there with her hind half toward me. There was fresh blood on the oak bark all the way up, with a million questions flooding my mind. I was without explanation at this point and was staring at this situation while a ringing started in my head. This area in Ohio does not have large cats or black bears that may stash my doe, so my brain was on pause. A second wave of fear came over me as I realized I was not alone. There was something just beyond and to the left of this large oak. With all my might from fear paralysis, I panned the light to the left to see the outline of something large and dark in color through a thick patch of multi-floral rose bushes. After 30 seconds of no movement and a small amount of courage to scare off this bear, I said, "Hey!" directly toward this outline, hoping to see my first one. The outline acted startled and slowly started moving away from me and standing up at the same time to find that I was looking at something over 8 feet tall and no sound. At this point, I was a mess that almost pissed myself as I'm watching this unfold. Frozen and fixated with a weak flashlight, I felt vulnerable in that moment like nothing before or since. Terrified. After another minute, losing the outline of this thing up the bank and out of light range, I tore off in the direction I came, tossing the flashlight as I fled. I was never known to be fast in high school, but that night, I was running a personal best back the way I came to our property. I continued running back to where I sat, still hunting earlier, and picked up my backpack at a brisk pace. I ran the remaining half-mile back to the pole barn just 50 yards from the house without breaking stride. My lungs were on fire, and I could taste my own blood from my lungs with the stress running. I then sat there recovering with the final release of emotion settling in. I collected myself and realized that I could not explain what just happened over the last half hour. No explanation. And they would not believe me with that feeling when I looked up in the tree and out past to see this thing. Dreadful. Steve, I've roamed these small hills in this neck of the woods for years, with no explanation to all as to what happened or what I saw. None. I decided to cap it off in that moment and not tell anyone what happened the last day of deer season in 1991. My parents both noticed something wrong when I got back to the house after dark, so I acted frustrated about losing a possible shot on a deer. I did lose the deer. My mother asked again the next morning before going to church, but I basically lied about what really happened. I may share with her now. We don't have the kind of critters in Ohio that can do this, and I assumed for the bulk of my adult life that this is a huge bear. Steve, I was terrified in that moment, and I've tried to justify that this was what this was over the years with more questions. I'm now almost 50 and still have trouble explaining this to myself, only me. It took 2 years for me to get back out chasing deer again after that season, and fortunately have not had another experience like it. I did return to that same tree in '94 during a daytime walking hunt just to say to myself that I could do it. After 20 minutes of searching, I did find that old flashlight, about 5 yards to the right. No way. Nothing unusual happened, and my confidence came back to me shortly after. Each time I go out at that old farm, I still take note of my senses each time. I now live in Colorado and go back often to meet my family and friends with the occasional deer hunt. Writing this email has really had an impact on me with the final release of my experience. It's hard to explain. I'm still going through your channel to catch up and change my way of thinking about these possible beings that I strongly consider now. I'm very curious to know if you or any others ever had such experience while hunting. All the very best, Keith. Well, to answer your question, tons of people had that happen. I almost thought I had already read your story, but I hadn't, because somebody had a story almost identical to it, but different ending. Similar ending, but different. They seen the thing ripping across the bush ahead of them. Lots of people who had one that stands out, which struck me as alarming. I guess it stood out in my memory for so long because I heard it so many years ago. It was about a police report of some hunters in Alberta who came back to the camp and saw this huge hairy thing literally pull a mature 6-point bull elk off the meat pole whole. They said its hand went, covered its head muzzle, cocked its head muzzle over its shoulder, and ran with it, flailing around on its back. How freaking crazy would that be? I'm not looking, I don't want to lose a game animal to them myself, because especially at this point of the game, my flavor of hunting, I like putting in the time in and selecting something that's really old and mature and good to go and lived a long life and very rare to find. And when I find it and I finally harvest that animal, I don't want it stolen after I dump it, right? That would suck. But I'm super glad that you found this channel and you share it here, man. So stoked it helped you. And obviously gave you courage to be here, and I'm glad I gave you a release. Seems to help a lot of people just typing it out, doesn't it? Share more, man, and if you can, speak up and talk to your mom about it for sure. Somebody around that neighborhood knows something. I'll guarantee it. Somebody around that neighborhood or in your circle has got the same sentence going on right now, and that's keeping something in secret because they don't want to get laughed at. But don't forget, it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault that they got slapped in the face with this reality, right? It's nobody's fault. People laughing are just scared. That's all they are, scared. Now, let's hear somebody else, shall we? Uh-oh. What's this one? 2016 trapline experience. Uh-oh. This is sounding familiar. What I've experienced. Steve, my brother, thanks for allowing me to share. I tried sharing with a psychiatrist, but they brought up my ability to raise my son. I think I read this. My son has nobody else, so I recanted, and I hated every second of it. This encounter is connected to the 1996 hunt on my uncle's trapline. As the ravens fly, these two traplines are around 100 kilometers from each other. I will not go into great detail about all our goings-ons with me and the two juvenile Sasquatches I seen in '96. Okay, I haven't read this. All I can say is they kept on coming to me in these vivid dreams or premonitions. Excuse me. I watched the twins grow up in these premonitions. One of the last premonitions I had with them, they showed me trapping with my Uncle Bobby. They also showed me that they were protecting me from a wolf. To keep this short, I'll go directly to the day I had my encounter with a giant wolf. My Uncle Bobby had to go into town for parts, so I parked his skidoo behind the trailer and covered it with a tarp. After the second day, he returned after supper. In the morning, I got up, went outside to have my morning piss. When I was walking to the side door, I heard a 3-toned wolf call. That's weird. Usually it's a 2. That was very loud and it vibrated my stomach. That's not normal. I started cooking breakfast. We ate, then I cleaned up. I asked Uncle if he heard that wolf. He said no. I told him how strange that was, and he said that he never heard them call like that before. I got my work clothes on and went outside to get a skidoo ready. After I started the skidoo, I walked into the middle of the cut line to go start my quad. The cut line the trailer is on goes across the road and you can see down it for a few kilometers. I noticed what I thought was a coyote coming towards me. I just stood there in the middle of the cut line looking at this canine, and it was getting bigger the closer it got to me. So I decided I was going to act like I was hurt. So I started dragging my right leg behind me and started limping. I was moving away from this beast. Then I pretended like I fell, but I just went down to one knee. I turned my head to look at it, and I noticed how freaking big it was. My uncle's window faces that way, and he's seen it. I heard him coming out to see where I was, so now I really started to act hurt and scared. I was still dragging my leg behind me and kept glancing back at it. Uncle came and told me he would go by the truck, hide himself, and wait until he could get a shot off. He went and got into position, and the wolf could not see him. Now it's coming in hard, so I faced it, but I was down on one knee. It got to within about 100 meters. Then I could hear a truck coming, and then I could hear the truck jake braking. Me and the wolf looked towards the sound of the truck at the same time. Then this giant wolf turned sideways and ran into the bush. That's when I got a good look at this beast. It was around 4 feet tall, if not bigger. I figured it was 7 feet, if not more, in body length. The tail wasn't that big, and the head was huge. The snout was long and looked disappropriated from the rest of the body, and it had small ears to the size of the head. The color was gray, as in old gray, and reddish brown and black. 2 days later, we pulled traps and locked up camp. The last day I went back to the area, I was getting the tree knocks and pulled the traps. I dropped tobacco, said thank you for helping me. This is the last time you're going to see me. Then I prayed with all the love in my heart. Then I went and made a home for my son and I had to get an MRI of my brain 1 month ago. They noticed 2 white spots side by side of each other. I don't know if this is directly from my experience with them. I also have PTSD, and this does have something to do from my experiences with them. After I would dream of the twins, when I woke up, my head would be throbbing. I could feel pressure in my head. I've seen demons and their master. Unnaturally sizes of wolves and Sasquatches. I even had a close encounter with a UFO with my girlfriend and best friend. I've also seen and felt the love of Jesus. It's all real. Our elders tell us we don't even know of half what is really out there. This I know is true, and thank you for allowing me to finally let this go. I love you, Barry Allen Ferguson. Barry, appreciate you, man. That's quite the story. The wolf sounds freaking huge. I seen it. You know, when an actual timber wolf, I seen a guy one time, he was up in 101, Alaska Highway, years ago, pulled in to get gas, and this old fart come out. The guy looked like he's about 6'4", 6'5". And he said, hey, you want to see a picture of a 250-pound wolf? And we're kind of smirking, me and my partner, smirking at each other, going, yeah, okay, let's see it. Sure enough, he brings us out this frickin' picture of him standing in looked like a garage. And his back knees, hocks, were tied to the rafters at his head, and the neck and the head were laying flat on the concrete beside him. I never seen a wolf that frickin' huge in my life. I couldn't believe it. Unbelievable. But anyway, it'd be interesting to hear your description of those twin Sasquatches that you kept dreaming about, right? And it would be interesting to hear more of what you've experienced out there as well. I'm sure everybody would be in agreement with that one. But anyway, I hope that MRI stuff turns out for the better, not the worst, man. So you be safe out there. Be safe. Keep sharing the knowledge when you get it, if it's going to help somebody here, all right? Or help yourself. All right, one more. Then I gotta go. Arkansas sighting near Bubba Brews. Hello, Steve. My name is Thomas, and I'm a former Marine, avid hiker, and backpacker from southern Indiana. I work in account management, and my job takes me throughout southern Indiana and Kentucky. I probably spend an average 20 hours a week driving, not including my commute. Your show is one of the bright spots in my windshield each time. Your show is one of the bright spots of my windshield time each week. Excuse me. I couldn't tell you how many times I've listened to on the YouTube, but it's been a lot. I've actually been in the County in Kentucky mentioned a couple of times while I was listening to your daily Sasquatch story. Bullitt County. Bullitt. I was driving down the exact spot of I-65 from the truck driver story as I was hearing you read it. No shit. I was listening to you another time while I was driving to Grayson County, and as soon as you read the writer's intro to his email mentioning that his story took place in Grayson County, I passed a small green sign that said Grayson County on it. No way. That's crazy. There are a couple others that I've been in said county, or would be a little later that day. What are the odds of that? No shit. That is crazy. The story I'm writing in to semi-confirm is the email about a mostly gray Sasquatch in Quachita National Forest. It's either Quachita or it's Wachita. I think I saw it in December 2019, but I had ever stumbled upon your channel, I believe. Oh, sorry. I got people taking my attention away. I think I saw it in December 2019 before I had ever stumbled across your channel, I believe. I was driving my wife west of US 70 from Hot Springs, Arkansas at a crater of Diamond State Park to spend a few hours looking for diamonds in the park. It's one of the few places you're allowed to keep what you find, and several times a year someone pulls an uncut multi-carat diamond from the mud. Not us though. Just more mud and a couple pieces of broken glass. My wife was busy on her phone and I was enjoying the scenery as, I'm going to call it Quachita National Forest, was on the right side of the road, and depending on the map, either more Quachita or a Christmas tree farm was on the left. On the Christmas tree side, I saw something running through the trees, almost perpendicular to the road and in the opposite direction. It was big, but my view is obscured. The whole experience lasted just a few seconds as I quickly passed it. I never really got a view of the legs to estimate the height because of the uneven grade of the area it was. It wasn't running with its arms all willy-nilly like some people have observed, but pumping its arms like a large human in hot pursuit of a bacon cheeseburger. And how fast do bacon cheeseburgers run? Until I heard the letter, I was more on the side that it was just a large person in a crappy fake fur jacket with tassels running for whatever reason. At the closest point, it was probably 60 yards from me. My wife didn't see it, and I was brought back to focusing on my drive by her pointing out Bubba's a couple minutes down the road. The guy whose email you read matched the hair I saw. Gray with some black, some red, and a little white. Just a thought I'd share. I don't really have any other Sasquatch stories, but I have had a lot of strange experiences in the woods. Thanks for what you do. Sincerely, Thomas. Thomas, the frickin' odds. Isn't that insane? The odds of hearing those stories while you're driving and you drive by the frickin' county or the sign or the river or the road or whatever. That's just bizarre. And that color of hair, all those shades of hair, good luck spotting that shit if they're not moving. Good luck. Standing right in front of you 10 yards away, probably colored like that, and as long as they're not moving and they don't have skyline behind them, simple human beings not going to be seeing that shit because we don't look for that. Ever. Crazy. Thanks for that share, man. Appreciate that. Appreciate it a lot. Maybe got time to do one more. I'm gonna get in trouble here pretty quick, but okay, how long is this? This isn't too bad. Western Washington Strangeness. Can you believe how many emails I've got, you guys? Like, for real. This is just a little frickin' insane. So many. Western Washington Strangeness. My name is Ian C. I grew up in Everett, Washington, a peninsula city with the Puget Sound to the west and the Snohomish River to the east, rounding the north end of the city to empty into the Sound about 40 miles north of Seattle. When I was a teenager back in the early 90s, I came home from school to an empty house, which was typical. My parents worked and never got home until I was 6 or 7. As I opened the front door and headed towards the kitchen, I heard something back there and figured somebody was home. But when I entered the kitchen, I saw, quote, the predator, end quote. Being everyone says they see out in the woods, it had the shape of a tall person but was see-through, and it ran from the kitchen through a laundry room where there was a back door, just as I entered the kitchen. I followed it, not realizing what had just happened, and looked out the back door, which was closed, and saw nothing. And that's when the fear kicked in. I turned around to speed walk to the front door and left. I'm just wondering what these could be. Why did I see one in the middle of the suburbs when everyone else sees them in the forest? I've also had a strange experience in the woods out on Highway 2 east of Monroe in the town of Startup. I've heard some other stories from your channel nearby. One person was hiking on Man Road. Anyway, I was going to go fish for the summer run kings in the Skykomish River at the mouth of the Wallace River. I was hiking in about 3 a.m., and as I got close to the river, I heard a big kersploosh. I honestly thought, what the F was that? I heard it again. I told my buddy someone was throwing rocks at us. He replied, it's just a fish. But I know what fish jumping sounds like, and we were going for kings. And these ones stay at the bottom. I never saw one jump, in fact, that day, as I was beginning to wonder if there were even any fish in the river. Nobody was catching either. I think I saw one fish caught. Well, this kersploosh kept happening. It sounded like big rocks thrown in a deep pool. I was pretty spooked and didn't stop until we got further down the river. I told myself it must have been a beaver to calm my nerves, but they make more of a slap. I never heard it so many times in a row. Besides, I would think they relocate the beavers on that particular river due to the salmon hatchery. Sasquatch never crossed my mind back then, but the more I listened to everyone's stories, it clicked. And it seems like that fits better than anything else I try to use to fill in the blank. I don't know. I've also heard strange howls up by Granite Falls. But anyhow, thanks for reading my stories. I'm hooked on your channel now. Looks like you're starting to get some traction on this slippery road. You're a good man helping lots of people. Hope this can keep going without big tech getting in the way. They won't get in the way. If they do, we'll just get around them. That's alarming as shit. Who the hell would want to see something like that in their house? Who the hell wants to see something like that anywhere? Not me. That thousands of people are. My First Nation superhero ladies, they seen the mirage apparition. Remote Native community. They've also seen portals numerous times. Seen birds go in and out of them. Seen a dog stick his head in one and pull his head back out. And that's more for another time. Wow. Well, you be careful out there fishing, man. You already know what the kersploosh was.